Hello there, guys. Recently, somebody sent me a request to update my Godzilla collection. Well, my Godzilla movie collection to be specific. And this video was requested by one Hana Balconi or Hana Balconi. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, but that's a great name you've got there. This video was requested in the comments section when I showed all of you my Godzilla movie collection, but that movie was almost 5 years ago, back when I was just starting high school, and now 5 years later, I'm almost halfway through college. But even with all this stuff changing, my loyalty and my huge fanship to Godzilla has not changed one bit. In fact, I think it's gotten stronger with the new movie recently. So anyway, if you see if you see a DVD in that video that doesn't make it into this video, that's because I've sent it downstairs so that other people can see them, and I've replaced that DVD with another version of the movie that I think is superior. Whether it's basically, I've replaced a lot of the old DVDs with recent Blu-rays, and I'll give those older DVDs to other people who want to see them. Maybe some younger kids who are coming into my family, and I'll introduce them to Godzilla, and if they're interested, I'll give them those DVDs. But also, I've decided to not include VHS tapes in this video because I just want to say any Godzilla movie that is not officially on DVD here in the United States, I'll just see it online. I won't go back and play the VHS tape of it. Also, sorry if this intro is too long, but one last thing I'll say is that if you're wondering and why there are so many DVDs and I don't have any box sets here, in the end, I really would want to just say screw it and get one official huge box set of all the Godzilla movies, at least up to date. But the problem is that here in America, there are many movie distributing companies that provide English dubs, etc. And over the years, there wasn't one company that took all the Godzilla films and distributed them here in the Western nations. It was a bunch of them, and that's, I think, why there's no DVD box set that includes all the movies. It's different distributing companies that have the rights to different movies, so there's no box set that has all of them because they're owned by different companies. I think back in Japan there are rumors that Toho, because all the movies are owned by Toho in the movie, well, at least most of them, they will be releasing one big box set over there in Japan, but here in the United States there are just too many distributing companies that have the rights to too many movies to get an official box set, though I hope it does come up in the future. So anyway, let's get started. This right here is the Criterion collection of the original Gojira, as it was called in Japan originally in 1954, and Godzilla, King of the Monsters, as it was named in America when it was dubbed in 1956. In all honesty, even all these years later, I don't have a favorite movie anymore. I'm not a big fan of favorites. However, I do have a list of movies I consider the best, and this is still on my list. I think it's a great allegory and reaction for the forces and consequences of atomic warfare that were shown in World War II. I think the overall poetry and artistic representation it provides is great. I think the effects, while they are really dated at times, there's still a lot to enjoy from them. And I think it just overall tells a really good story, and it does a really good job of what it's trying to do. I mean, along with Blade Runner, Terminator 2, How to Train Your Dragon, The Iron Giant, Gone with the Wind, Citizen Kane, Lilo and Stitch, and there's another one I'm forgetting right now. Well, Alien, and Guardians of the Galaxy. I still think this is a movie I think this is a movie, along with all of those other movies, I could consider my favorite. But interestingly enough, if you go, actually, I'll show this one thing to you. If you open it up, this makes for a cool collectible. There's actually a little pop-up in the middle of this. And I'll try my best to adjust the camera. I'm sorry if this is sloppy, I just have to show you all this. Oh, shoot. There it is. This is one of the reasons I actually got the Criterion collection. I just think this thing is too cool to miss. Look at that. That's awesome. But interestingly enough, one thing I learned is that very old black and white movies on Blu-rays, I don't think most of them have the aspect ratio expanded. And what I mean by that is that there's no change in aspect ratio from when they were originally released on DVD or to when they were released on Blu-ray. Like, if you watch the Blu-ray version of this Criterion collection, and I think on any other Blu-ray ports of the original Gojira, the aspect ratio is still square. It's something you would expect to see on a modern, a standard definition TV, and it's not rectangular. The aspect ratio isn't expanded like you would expect from other HD TVs. Though if you do have an HD TV where you can adjust you can expand the size vertically and horizontally, that won't be a problem. And I like to do that because I think it gives it more of a theater feeling, like I was originally watching it in a theater where the ratio is expanded. But it's interesting, I think, to note. And I won't be as long with all the other Godzilla films, just some I find unique. Godzilla Raids Again. This was a series of 2006 DVDs released where both English and Japanese versions were released to Western nations in these little DVD steel books. I lost the little case for the little tag for this one below that you'll see on others. This movie, I think... this stuff is always falling over. This movie, I think, for what it's worth... when it doesn't follow me, I think this movie, for what it's worth, is a rather decent sequel to the original Gojira, but there's not too much of a dark tone. It's you more or less see it for cheesy monster fun. But as the first sequel to Godzilla, I think they could have done a lot worse, and I'm really glad that this overall got the ball rolling on all of those sequels. I think Godzilla is the movie installment that is the movie franchise that has the most number of installments in it. There's like 28 or 29, I believe. Yeah, I think there are 29 if you don't count the American Godzilla movie. Let me see if I can adjust this a little bit more so that you get a bit better picture. King Kong versus Godzilla. This is I think this was released by Universal on Blu-ray in, I think, 2013 or 2012, I forget. But interestingly enough, there's no main menu on this Blu-ray. There is a quick menu you can access on the sides while you see it, but there's no real main menu. It just begins and then it starts over. So it's kind of like a VHS in a way, kind of funny for the nostalgia. But this movie, I think, it's really fun. It's a great crossover. There are very few movie crossovers nowadays with stuff like this, where you see crossover fights. You know, there's King Kong versus Godzilla, there's Alien versus Predator, there's Freddy versus Jason, and all the other Universal horror movie crossovers. But I think this movie is one of the better ones. It's very fun. It's got a lot of action. Even if King Kong does look really dumb, it's still very enjoyable. And what's great is that in the end, the viewer can decide, I think, who wins in the end. Speaking of which, the rumor of the Japanese ending in King Kong vs. Godzilla, it's not true. The ending is the same regardless of what version you see, be it released in America or Japan. Here we have another crossover, Mothra vs. Godzilla. Even people who aren't too big on the Godzilla franchise will probably heard about this one. It's one of the most famous Godzilla movies ever. It's very enjoyable. It's very fun and cheesy. It's got some good special effects. Godzilla is very, very powerful in this one. I mean, really destructive. No matter what the military does, they just can't destroy him. This movie really declares how indestructible he is. And there's just some good fighting, and there's some really good action. It's just overall a really good installment. I don't know if I could consider it one of the best or in the top 5, but it's still really enjoyable. Very fun. Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. This was, I actually believe this was released the same year as Mothra vs. Godzilla in 1964. It's the first one where Godzilla really became a good guy in the end, though we did have to make the transition. And actually, there's not too much Godzilla in this movie. There's a lot of focus on Mothra and other monsters such as Rodan, so it's not until the ending where things really start to get good. But when it does get good, it's very enjoyable. Actually, I think by this point, I don't know if they were still releasing English dubs of Godzilla movies in theaters to make moolah at the box office. So I think from this point on, they basically made English dubs of Godzilla movies, and then they just aired them on TV without putting them into theaters to get some viewers. This is Invasion of the Astro Monster. I tell you, I think this movie is overrated in the Godzilla community. You see less Godzilla in this movie than any other installment, I believe, when looking at a chart. I think the Japanese version is like an hour and a half, but you only see him for about 5 minutes. And there's not even too much focus on Rodan and King Ghidorah in this film. Though it does have its moments. The final battle is worthy enough. It's got a kind of interesting, even if it's a kind of predictable twist. And of course, it has the legendary victory dance, but I just don't think this is one of the best. Think it pads out too long and you just want to see some more monster action. And I do think there is even less Godzilla in this movie compared to the others if you take into account ratio of his screen time with the total runtime of the movie. There's less Godzilla in this movie than any other movie. In fact, I could tell when I was watching it that Invasion doesn't have too much Godzilla. This was the first Godzilla movie I ever saw, actually. My mom got the VHS tape when I was like 6, and I loved it. I watched the hell out of it. Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, Ebra, Horror of the Deep. Some people I know have problems with this movie, but I still think this is a really, really good installment. The overall kind of cheesy 60s vibe, the ocean island theme that the movie presents is a lot of fun. It's very atmospheric and enjoyable. You know, you hear James Bond or Batman-esque music in this whole thing. And when I say Batman, I mean Batman from the cheesy Adam West show. That's a perfect way to describe this movie. I think it's cheesy, but it's cheesy in a way that's enjoyable to the end, to the bone. Ebra himself, I thought, was creative in how he fought Godzilla, and of course vice versa. Mothra even has a small role in this. There's a nice send-off to King Kong here, with Godzilla supposedly having an interest in protecting the heroine of the movie. So I think in the end, it's a really good installment. Son of Godzilla. Now this is where stuff gets really weird for the Showa series. The Showa series, of course, is the first of the 3 series where Godzilla, throughout Godzilla's lifespan. And there's a new one starting off now with the Legendary series, but in the Showa series, this is where things got really weird. With a title such as Son of Godzilla, you know what you're in for. You're in for a lot of stupid stuff, but a lot of laughs. Godzilla doesn't even look too much like what you would expect him to look like in this movie. Just look at that, he looks very odd. I think that's the worst Godzilla suit they've made as of now. Again, it's very cheesy, it's very stupid. Even if you're a person who likes stupid stuff and stupid movies, you're gonna just be like, what? Throughout this entire film. So I think depending on how you enter the movie, what you expect, and how much like nonsense you can take, you'll either love this movie or you will hate this movie. Also, surprisingly enough, it appears that Toho officially has dubbed Godzilla's son Manila. Some say Minya, but in this original movie, they never gave him a name, I believe. They just called him Godzilla's kid or Godzilla's son. This was supposed to close off the entire Showa series, Destroy All Monsters. This is a Blu-ray. It's not released. I think this is the only Godzilla film released by a company that I don't see anywhere else in my collection. Tokyo Shock. Tokyo Shock released this, I believe, in 2011. It's a lot of, again, it focuses a lot on the humans, and the disappointing stuff is that monsters such as Manda, Varan, and Baragon only make cameos, and they don't really participate in the final battle. But even when taking that into account, the final battle is a lot of fun. It's very enjoyable seeing all the monsters just completely crash and destroy King Ghidorah. It's set in the year 1999, and I think this was made in 1968, I believe, or 1968, I could be wrong. But even then, when you get to the ending, it's all worth it. The human stuff can get a little boring at times, but if you just skip ahead to the ending, it could be very enjoyable. I don't know if I can consider it. I think perhaps I could consider it in the top 10, just not in the top 5, but it is still a lot of fun. Oh boy, a lot of people probably are familiar with this one for the rap it's gotten. Attack on All Monsters, aka Godzilla's Revenge. I think nostalgia has clouded my mind on this. I think this one is so stupidly enjoyable. The human parts are enjoyable and supposedly innocently kawaii in a way, if you understand what that means. But I think for me, again, there's stock footage used throughout the movie. That part is disappointing. It's just blatant stock footage of Godzilla versus the Sea Monster and Son of Godzilla used throughout. But the original footage you do see where Godzilla and his son battle Gabra, which is a ridiculous monster, by the way. I think it's too much. It's enjoyable too much. I don't hate the movie. but I still think that if you can handle a lot of stupid nonsense and you're in a Godzilla movie, then you'll enjoy the scenes with Gabra in it. But aside from that, it's not all that great, to say the least, but I don't hate it as much as other people do. Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. If this makes any sense, it's not as stupid as Attack on All Monsters, but boy, this is one hell of a drug trip. I mean, it's it was made in the I think it was made in the I think it was made in the 70s. I'm forgetting at the point, but you can tell it's like it has a huge drug-induced atmosphere. And I think Fedora is what pulls the movie together in the end. He's a really interesting, kind of scary at points and unique monster, based on pollution. The movie's not as preachy as other too environmentally aware shows such as Captain Planet, etc. I do think the sad part is that the fighting does pad out for a little bit too long in the end, but aside from that, it's decent for what it's worth. Godzilla flies in this movie. I'm not joking. You can see for itself. He actually flies. So it's okay, I think, in the end. This one, James Rolfe, aka the Angry Video Game Nerd, really doesn't like Godzilla on Monster Island, Godzilla vs. Gigan. The title already is where stuff starts to go wrong. I think, James Rolfe said it best. There's only a few seconds of Monster Island throughout the entire movie, so it's the same thing as calling Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom Indiana Jones in Shanghai, or as I would like to call it, it's the same as calling Guardians of the Galaxy Star-Lord on Morag. But even with that considered, Gigan, again, is what pulls the movie through, kind of like what Hedorah does for the Smog Monster. He's such an odd amalgamation. He's like a bird with blades for hands and a buzzsaw in his stomach, and he screeches a lot. So the final battle is enjoyable, and King Ghidorah, of course, returns. Anguirus is also there to help Godzilla. So I think the final battle is, again, like Destroy All Monsters, what pulls the movie into the end, but it does take a while to get started, and oh boy, is this one stupid. Interestingly enough, the scenario itself is pretty ridiculous. Cockroaches from space disguise themselves as humans in this movie, and they create a giant theme park where they plan to take over the world. And their main attraction is a life-size statue of Godzilla that shoots lasers. It sounds like I'm making this stuff up, but trust me, I'm not. This one took a while to get released on DVD and Blu-ray. I think it took a while for distribution companies to get the rights so that they could put this on a digital format and then Blu-ray. Godzilla vs. Megalon, this is like the Room of Godzilla movies where it's so stupid and so ridiculous that you just have to love it. I'm not joking, you have to love this movie. You've got Megalon, a giant bomb-spitting cockroach with drills for hands that shoots electricity. You've got Jet Jaguar, a knockoff of Ultraman that changes his size and plays charades with Godzilla. Gigan returns. The whole movie was supposedly just filmed in 3 weeks, and there's a ton of stock footage. But this movie, in the end, is just a trip for the Jet Jaguar theme and Godzilla's infamous flying tail kick. You probably know what I'm talking about already. This was ridiculous. Hey, wait, I take it back, actually. This was also released by Tokyo Shock. So Tokyo Shock released Destroy All Monsters and Godzilla vs. Megalon on Blu-ray, so who knew? Actually, interestingly enough, some trivia. This and Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster both got episodes for Mystery Science Theater 3000. And I recommend checking out Mystery Science Theater 3000. They're really funny, and they exist now as riff tracks. See some of their movie riffing. It's really enjoyable. I actually forgot something else I was going to say here. And, I guess I'll come. Oh, yeah. The thing with this movie is that supposedly there was going to be a 2-disc Blu-ray release of this, mentioned 2011, but it never came out. I think the Blu-ray in the end was released in 2012, and it was released to DVD in 2011, but the 2-disc Blu-ray of this thing never came. This one here is a really good one. This is when Godzilla started getting good again. To describe this movie, it's a perfect combination of cheesiness and Godzilla action. I think it treats itself more like a comic book that is more restrained than other installments. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, the music is catchy, the action scenes are very enjoyable. King Caesar, a lion god, comes to help Godzilla battle Mechagodzilla, who is full of weapons. It's loaded. He's controlled by apes in space. It sounds crazy, but actually it takes itself a little bit more seriously than you would expect, but it's just so enjoyably corny. Excuse me. Acts like a comic book to me. It's like if Marvel made a comic book based on Godzilla and upped up the corniness to where it's so enjoyable. Though the one that did take itself even more seriously was this, Terror of Mechagodzilla. I think aside from the original Gojira, this is my favorite movie of the Showa era. I think what pulls the movie together a lot for me in the end is Titanosaurus here. He's just an interesting monster, very unique. And again, there's even more action in this one. There's a lot of explosions. The plot is kind of unique, I think, for the humans with a cyborg femme fatale that controls Mechagodzilla throughout this entire movie. Godzilla has a really awesome introduction in this one, for his first appearance. And the music and the main track actually is haunting and foreboding enough. It's a good installment, and it has a lot of enjoyably stupid moves also. Now, I want to show you all Godzilla 1984, or Gojira, the 1984 remake of Gojira in this collection. But sadly, as of now, it does not have an official Western DVD release. It's the only Godzilla movie that has... It's the only Godzilla movie in the United States and in other Western nations, I think, that does not have an official Western release on DVD. I've heard some rumors that they are going to try and get the rights. Back in 2012, I think it was said that they are going to get the rights to release Godzilla 1984 on DVD and Blu-ray here in the United States, but I haven't heard anything from it since then. However, I do watch both the Japanese and English versions of Godzilla 1984 online. I think it's a really good installment, but it does have a lot of problems in the end. So let's skip to this one here, Godzilla vs. Biollante. Now, I think this is the most disappointing and overrated of the Godzilla films when it comes to opinions on Godzilla movies in the Godzilla community that I follow on Facebook. I think, in the end, Biollante is a really good Godzilla villain. She's really creative, she's really creepy and unique. But I think the problem here is that there's a lot of build-up, but there's not enough payoff. You see a lot of Godzilla and Biollante in the movie, but there's not too much interaction or fighting going on that I think really makes it a good installment of the Godzilla series. There are some cool scenes, like when Biollante uses her Venus flytrap arms to go right through Godzilla's hands. But aside from that, I think it's very underwhelming. I'm glad they released on Blu-ray, and I do think it's a meh installment, so to say, but I just don't think it's as good as other people say it is. If you do think it's a really good movie and a good installment, that's perfectly fine with me. It's your opinion, but Sally, I'm going to have to disagree with you. Biollante is a great villain, but the movie she was in, I'm just not too fond of. Though then the second series, also the Heisei series as it's known, got really good, starting with these two. Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, this one is very creative. It has an interesting plot with Godzilla's origins and a story arc including time travel. Godzilla and Mothra, the Battle for Earth, also known as Godzilla vs. Mothra in Japan. It's a really interesting installment. It's got a lot of cool stuff in the end, and I think both of these are a lot of fun. They're not as cheesy as some of the other movies, but I think they use their seriousness supposedly in a way that works. It's nice that Sony, and I think it was TriStar that released these Blu-rays, were able to get them to such good quality. Very good installments in the end. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 and Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. I think these movies are also really good. You see more of Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 than any other Godzilla movie. I think you see Godzilla for almost a half hour in this one, and I think the reimagining of Mechagodzilla here was really cool. Also how they worked in Rodan into the whole mix. I take back what I said about, I think it was 4 years ago with Godzilla vs. Space, well, almost 4 years ago. I take back what I said about Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I no longer think the movie is the best of the Heisei series, but I think Space Godzilla is still the best villain. But these two are really good installments of the Heisei series. They're good ones. I also don't think that Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla is the weakest of the second series. I think that goes to Biollante, sadly. Now, this movie, I think, was the best of the Heisei series, Godzilla vs. Destroyer. It was really interesting. Toho wanted to make this the last Godzilla movie where Godzilla dies. Destroyer himself is an awesome villain. He looks like Satan himself. It's actually very emotional how they treat the death of Godzilla here. It's got some great action scenes. The pacing is also really good, how it builds up, and the payoff is great. Though for here, actually, it's interesting. What was going on with these other TriStar releases is that they would release a Godzilla installment and then the Godzilla movie that came directly after that installment. But here they just skipped one, and instead of making it Godzilla vs. Destroyer and then Godzilla 2000 on the double Blu-ray set, they just skipped ahead and went to Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. So I think that's odd. Why do you skip a movie in between and go straight to another one on the double pack when there was consistency in the past? Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, sadly, I think is the weakest of the Millennium series. It's not a bad movie by any means. It's just that the formula kind of wear thin. Megaguirus herself was a really cool villain, and one of her special abilities I liked, but other than that, I think it was a little bit too underwhelming. I think one of the best parts is that, in the end, the ending of Godzilla vs. Megaguirus shows how indestructible Godzilla is, that not even a black hole can defeat Godzilla. I'm not joking, that's how the movie ends. So I think these, again, Godzilla vs. Destroyer is a great one, but Godzilla vs. Megaguirus, just not my favorite. This one, though, was a good one of the Millennium series, Godzilla 2000. Until the 2014 reboot of Godzilla, this was the last Godzilla movie to be released in theaters in the United States. I think it does a great job of rebooting Godzilla. I think it's an ideal Godzilla reboot, how they were able to make his design unique and updated, but they still kept the classic image of Godzilla. The special effects are really great, aside from a few some CGI scenes that excuse me, I can't talk. Aside from a few CGI scenes that aren't dated too well, I think aside from that, the special effects are great. The human characters, surprisingly, I think are likable. It has a interesting story, and Orga was a really good villain to pit up against Godzilla. Nice to see I can finally see the Japanese version of this one. Now, this one here actually is very different. Godzilla and Mothra King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All Out Attack. This one has the longest title of any other Godzilla movie, but this one is crazy. It's like if Michael Bay was a good director and he directed a Godzilla movie. There's tons of explosions. There's actually a side of comedy here or there. King Ghidorah, Mothra, and Baragon actually come together to try and kill Godzilla, and this one he is really overpowered. Godzilla is an absolute monster in this one. He's so overpowered, he blows everything up. His fire is practically indestructible. It's got a lot of interesting effects. This one is a really good one. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, I think, it's a good Mechagodzilla for what it's worth, but it's just not one of my favorites. I think it's one of the lower Mechagodzilla movies. The best part was Kiryu himself and how it was interesting how he operated with his ultimate cannon and his absolute zero feature and the missiles, and his design, I think, was spot on. But other than that, I don't think it's really that great a Mechagodzilla film. Though it's not bad by any means. Interestingly enough, the 2002 and 2003 design of Godzilla is what's in the pop-up book on the Godzilla Criterion Collection. And lastly, the final two of the Japanese Godzilla films, at least as of now. Godzilla Tokyo SOS, a really fun and enjoyable one. It brings together Godzilla, Mothra, and Kiryu all in a big Tokyo brawl, so it's very enjoyable. There's a lot of action, there's a lot of suspense, and there's a lot of incredible stuff, so it's really fun. And if you thought that was fun, though, Godzilla Final Wars, boy, did they end the series right. The best way to describe Godzilla Final Wars, imagine if somebody got drunk, high, and super jacked up on sugar, and they just decide to go all out in Godzilla Final Wars. It's kind of like an update of Destroy All Monsters, though there's not every single last monster in the entire Godzilla series in this movie, but there's still a ton of monsters. There's a ton of awesome special effects. There's a ton of human ninjas fighting, and the story itself is just enormous. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. So I think James Rolfe said it best. This is like Godzilla on crack. So if you just want to let reality fly out the window and be entertained to your bone, then Godzilla Final Wars is the film for you. Now we're going to what many people consider the first real American Godzilla movie, Godzilla, directed by Gareth Edwards. I think in the end of this movie split a lot of audiences because there was a line between people who were okay in the old days when monsters didn't have that much screen time in their own movies, between people who just want to see a ton of action and other good stuff. I think in the end I was very satisfied and happy with this movie. I reviewed it on my channel already, but I think it gets down what it should have done really well. It's a Godzilla movie, but it's a Godzilla movie that has been updated still. You know, the tone is increased. It kind of takes a Christopher Nolan-like tone, but they update a lot of the movie. It's darker, but in the end it's still a Godzilla movie, and that's what I think makes it so great. The human characters are disappointing, sadly. I think after Bryan Cranston left, the human characters went on a downward slope. But I think in the final battle and any scene with Godzilla, the movie really pulled itself together, and I thought this was a really good movie. I definitely enjoyed it. This is a Target exclusive because there's a bonus special feature about the rebirth of an icon, how they were able to, you know, not only make the movie, but their vision when making a Godzilla movie. It's not that great of a special feature, but I like seeing it anyway. I thought this was a good purchase from Target. Interestingly enough, though, there's a Japanese collector's edition of Godzilla on Blu-ray in the country, and boy, is it big. Not only do you get like 5 discs and you get like, you know, a ton of bonus features, but it comes with a NECA figure of the 2014 Godzilla, but that's only in Japan. And in Germany, there's like, I think, a 6-disc steel case where you get a ton of bonus content. But America never gets any collector's editions or ultimate editions of Godzilla on Blu-ray here in the United States, so I guess Germany and Japan always get the great stuff. I'm jealous. And as an added bonus, and some stuff is flying off here. Godzilla the Animated Series, they released the entire animated series on DVD. Oh, it's heavy, it's starting to... Yeah, they released the entire animated series on DVD in April of 2014 here in the US. I have to say, I don't count the 1998 Godzilla movie as part of my collection anymore because I just don't want to, I kind of want to forget it ever exists, but boy, did this television series redeem the image of the awful Godzilla 1998 abomination. Godzilla in this movie is actually Godzilla. He breathes fire, he fights other monsters, he's smarter than you think. The human characters were a lot of fun. They had their own unique personalities, they had their own unique countries of origin, and I thought the television series was awesome. It perfectly combined the cheesiness and the stupidness of Daikaiju films while making it fit into an American animated television series back in the 1990s. The same people who made the Men in Black animated series also made this television series. The animation is really unique and really good. The monsters Godzilla fights against in every episode are very creative. The storylines are quite decent. It's just all around a great animated series. Because of this series, I refer to this Godzilla as the American Godzilla, because he's worthy to be called the American Godzilla. Not Zilla Jr., not Zilla. This is the real American Godzilla, in my opinion. The animated American Godzilla. Interestingly enough, apparently this had 2 unaired episodes because it got canceled before they could show them on the air. So that's a great bonus. And this premiered on Fox Kids, and I remember seeing it a long time ago as a little kid, along with clips of Digimon and other stuff. This was from 1998 to 1999, and I think this animated series still holds up in the end. A great television series. So anyways, I hope you all enjoyed it. That's my Godzilla movie collection. If you've had your own experiences with the Godzilla movies, and if you want to share your Godzilla movie collection with me, then feel free to comment below and let me know. Let me know what you thought about this video, and thank you all for watching very much, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.